And now on the World Service, exclusively by From Dial Square to Where, it's time for Mesut, Ireland, discs.
Hello and welcome to From Dial Square to Where.
And now on the World Service, exclusively by From Dial Square to Where, it's time for Mesut, Ireland, discs.
I'm back. What happened there? I don't know what happened there. So apologies for keeping you.
I have no idea. That was one of the most bizarre minutes of my life.
I didn't know if I needed to speak. I was looking at Tom going, is this all right? What's up,
Do you know what, Tom? How'd you cope? How'd you cope with these videos? Mine never seem to work properly. I don't know what's going on. I don't know. I apologise. I really do apologise. I was stuck and I was thinking, oh my God, what's going on? Anyway,
I thought it was going to be a silent episode.
Yeah. I don't know whether it played or not, or whether it got stuck or anything. But God, I'm going to have to just bin those off. I'll tell you, they're not good for my heart. Anyway, as you can see, I've got two great guests with me today. Really grateful for you both to come on. First off, it's Tom from Lagoon Talk. Everyone's familiar with you, your work, Tom. It's absolutely fantastic. Thank you ever so much for coming on.
No problem. I think you flattered me a bit by saying everyone, but
well, you're one of the absolutely. I'm sure you're one of everyone's favourites, Tom, and definitely one of mine.
Cheers, mate.
Love your channel. It's fantastic, and the work you've been doing on that is incredible. So I urge everyone to go over there and have a look at the Goonie Talk YouTube channel, and obviously you work on the 101 Greatest Goals as well.
Yeah, that's now my day job, which is nice. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic and well deserved. And Johnny Cochran, how are you? Thank you ever so much for coming on.
Oh, very pleased to do it. Very pleased to do it. Yeah, I'm maybe a less familiar face, but you know, a charmed face for being here with you, wonderful gentlemen.
No, you are obviously you're being a bit coy there, but I'm sure a lot of people have seen you on the Arsenal Nation show, sort of pre-match show, isn't it? That you're on regularly.
Yeah,
and the podcast, of course.
Yeah, host of the co-host of the official Arsenal Nation podcast, but yeah, very much a kind of bit of a regular on the Arsenal Nation live broadcast as well. But obviously, sign of the times, really. Those shows have ceased to kind of maintain, for obvious reasons, by the fact that there were no fans in the stadium. So having a couple of us sat there going, "Oh God!" They're probably
is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they've realised we're nothing without the fans. So apparently this is the new way of doing it. Really, remotely watching Arsenal in your front room once again and enjoying it from there and not getting up close like the rest of us.
Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it at the moment. Not a lot of people are. But less said about that, the better at the moment. But how come you're not doing the podcast? Surely you can continue the podcast, though, Johnny. That was it was really good to listen to. Can't you do that remotely, or?
There are a few reasons why that is not currently happening, anyway. But I mean, like some of it is down to basically. With regards to that, at the moment, I think there were conversations that needed to be had around it anyway. So don't see that happening at the moment, regardless.
Okay.
And it just kind of, we'll see. We'll see. But right now, the football world seems to be moving a bit differently anyway. So. Yeah,
it certainly does. Well, I look forward to it coming back anyway at some point, and it's a good show. So this is Mesut Island Discs. It's clearly got nothing to do with Desert Island Discs. It's, no rip-off whatsoever. But, I got the idea for this initially when I first listened to the Ian Wright episode of Desert Island Discs, which was fantastic. I don't know if you guys heard that one. I've heard great things, actually, and I keep meaning to listen to the Tony Adams one as well. Apparently that's an exceptional episode as well of Desert Island Discs. But this is obviously an Arsenal-based version, and we're going through a few goals, games, etc. of days gone by that are really important to you guys more than anything. And it's a good trip down memory lane. It's always been a good fun to do. First question is, whilst you are stranded on this desert island, is you have one goal that you would probably never get tired of watching, that you can watch any time you liked. I'll go to you first, Tom. Which goal have you chosen and why that you would take with you to the desert island?
So I picked Henry's goal against Leeds.
Wow, yeah.
That goal was, I mean, I'm 25, so my years of watching Thierry Henry were in very young years of my life. And so I never really got to appreciate those goals necessarily as well as maybe a lot of people that are older than me did. And so when he came back, I was of more of an age where I knew quite a bit more about football and I understood a lot more about the game. And to take that goal in when it went in was just unbelievably, it was poignant. It was kind of set up in the moment because it was 0-0 at the time, struggling as we did against a lower opposition side. And Henry turned up and did a classic finesse shot into the far corner on the left side of the goal. And it was just the most archetypal Henry goal that you'll ever see. And for me, I could just happily watch that back over and over again.
What a great choice. So
you can see me smiling there, Tom. The way you're talking about it really chimes with my heart. In terms of sentimentality, I think that's a very, very strong choice because for me, Thierry, unashamedly, is my favourite player of all time. Love to watch him. I thought he encapsulated peak Arsenal when we were something else, and it made me. I'm a little bit older than you, so just a little bit, casting agent, just a little bit older. But I probably was remembering, I was at an age where I knew what was going on and those goals were meaning stuff to me. And just to think back at that time when Thierry was in his full pomp, and I remember having game weeks where we'd have tough teams like Leeds at the time and whatnot. And I used to think, we'll win today. Every week, we'll win today. And I just knew it. I knew we would win, and we would win. And some of the performances were like, and it's the classic saying, you don't know what it's got till it's gone. But right now, you look at peak Henry, and that really sums up, when Arsenal were in their full pomp. And I think the goal that I've gone for, whilst I love the sentimentality of your choice, was a moment that I feel encapsulated when Henry went to that next level and took, not on his own, but it was a demonstration that Arsenal had moved to the next level, which is when he scored the goal against Fabian Barthez and United at Highbury, flicking it up. And now this was a period where Henry had come through and we had just sold Anelka, and I wasn't sure how I felt about it. They were like, oh, we're getting Henry in. I thought Henry might not work out. Anelka looked like the main man at that point. And he started really slowly, obviously, as we'd all remember in the season. But at that point, he just started knocking a few goals in. And I remember almost having that look like, oh, yeah, what are you doing over there, Thierry? Oh, yeah. And then in that game, for him to receive the ball like that, flick it up, whack. I just never I couldn't remember at that point seeing anything like it. I know Wright, he scored some amazing goals, but this was the biggest moment that Henry could have turned up in till that point. And for him to deliver in that kind of fashion was absolutely sensational.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I don't remember seeing another goal like that still, though, to be perfectly honest, Johnny. When it's a similar type of goal, I can't think of one.
No, but when you think about the kind of gadget goals, you might think about like a Dennis Bergkamp against Newcastle, for instance, where it's just, it's magic. It's ball into you, round the corner and whack, and they don't even know what's happened. So there are other goals that have that mystique about them. But for me, this was the big game. This was when you had to knock United, a very good United, off their pedestal. So for him to do it in that game, to have a player turning up in the biggest game and being a difference, felt like new territory for us at that point, and it was amazing.
Yeah, exactly. And do you know what? It may sound really weird, but don't you maybe slightly agree with the fans? Thierry Henry is slightly underrated. And what I mean by that is his brilliance was just taken for granted. Do you know what I mean? It's like he's our all-time leading goal scorer of Arsenal, and yet, you know, is he still, you know, quite fully valued? It's almost like all his goals and everything that he did and his brilliance is almost underrated by some people. I'm finding it hard to explain, but I find it's like that sometimes. Where
I understand.
You know, some people just
understand what you're saying.
Because he's just incredible player.
I think there's a lot around Arsenal at the moment. There's kind of a lot of there's a bit of expectation about Arsenal, and that's why you kind of see the rhetoric that you do on social media is that Arsenal should be doing a lot better. When actually, I think it's more of Arsenal could be doing a lot better than they currently are. And Henry was, when Anelka went, and I know I spoke earlier about not being obviously old enough to appreciate the goal, but when you do become old enough, you feel like it's almost a rite of passage to go back and educate yourself on what happened previously. So when Anelka did go, and there was this kind of whole thing about who is going to take on that, because we thought we were kind of set for the next 10 years with Anelka. And so when he left, evidently prematurely still, I think many people think, quite rightly, that this guy was going to come in, and when he didn't really kind of pick up pace in the first few games, wasn't scoring, there was kind of all these questions surrounding him, and as you say, then he did start to pick up, and then that goal was kind of, as Johnny said, that key turning point and that key moment of, this is Henry, and this is the player that we're going to have for the next however many years to then become an Arsenal legend. But I get what you're saying, Andrew. I think that there is an element about him that's underrated for sure.
I think the issue with Henry, sorry, Andrew, the issue with Henry, and again, I say this by openly prefacing it with, he is my favourite player of all time, genuinely as near to an idol as I have in the world. And, you know, he just plays football, but I love this guy. He's amazing. But ultimately, there will always be the critique when it comes to on the pitch performances, when it came to big game finals, like, it's tough for me to say that, but it is true, because when you think about, for me, which was our biggest game of all time, which was the Champions League final, we were so close to winning it. I know there was a lot going on in that game, Lehmann red card, etc. But ultimately, I think those of us that, you know, remember the game well will remember that moment when Henry ran through. We were 1-0 up, and we were down to 10 men. And it's like, who would you want on your team to have that chance one-on-one with the keeper? No one else. And you've got to tuck that away. Because if you do, we win the Champions League. We would have hung on then. And he missed it. And there was another game when we had Galatasaray in the Europa League final as well. It was a game that we kind of got through for the back door, a tournament, sorry. So we weren't as invested in it. But still, Henry had another stinker that day. And there were a few games in big moments when you compare that, and I don't think he's as good as Henry, as I've mentioned, but Drogba, for instance, his record in massive games, that was almost his selling point. I perform when the medals get handed out, that's where I am. Whereas Henry sometimes didn't grab the game by the scruff of the neck when he would do it so many times for Arsenal in other big moments for us.
Yeah, I've thought of an analogy as well. It's like when you're watching one of the shows on TV that you have to vote people out. Like, you know, I'm a Celebrity, I think it's just started, hasn't it? And or Strictly or whatever. And there's a clear favourite who's better than any of the other contestants. And people don't vote for them because they think they're going to be all right. Do you know what I mean? And so they actually end up shockingly getting voted out because people haven't voted because they just assume that they're going to go through anyway. That's the best analogy I can think of sometimes where I think about Arsenal fans and Thierry Henry as well, because it's taken for granted that he's one of the best he's the best player we've ever had in our history, and probably the best player the Premier League's ever seen. Yeah. And that's where I'm coming from.
I also think, Andrew, that there's a quest in like modern culture to be a little bit alternative and, you know, counterculture with regards to your picks. So, it's an easy choice to say Henry, but it's a bit more bohemian and niche to say Dennis Bergkamp, who was absolute class, or why don't we pull out Tony Adams and, you know, he embodies what he means to in terms of embodying leadership.
Exactly, yeah.
Whereas reality is when it really comes down to it, Henry was our best player. You can just look at the numbers, you can look at the way he performed, you know, but you say underrated, he's got a statue outside the stadium. So,
exactly. It's mad. That's what I said, but I prefaced it with it's mad thing to say, and it's really weird. And, you know, for him to say he's underrated, it's just the fact that he's, I don't know, I don't know whether you fully appreciated at the time, and now because he's the greatest footballer, like I said, probably the Premier League's ever seen, arguably, let alone Arsenal. It's just, I don't know, he's just overlooked because it's like, oh, that's Thierry Henry. Everyone knows about Thierry Henry. So he's not mentioned as much as some other players maybe. But yeah, anyway, it's a weird one. But let's move on to the second thing that you can take with you, and it's an Arsenal game that you could turn to whenever you liked. While stranded on island Mesut. Which one have you gone for, Tom, that you would like to take with you?
I chose Arsenal's FA Cup win against Hull City as my pick, which, again, another one to show my younger age, but it was, for me...
Making me jealous.
Sorry. I was at university my first year in this game, and so... Everyone I lived with weren't Arsenal fans. Everyone in the block of flats that I lived with was not Arsenal fans. And I dragged a good 15 people to a Wetherspoons that were showing it. And you can imagine the look on their faces as we go 2-0 down against Hull City right at the start of the game. And I'm sitting there just on the verge of tears at this point. And... because we've waited so long for a trophy to happen. I mean, being that age, it was folklore trophies. Like, we just hadn't really settled in my mind that Arsenal could do that, because I'd sat through so many years of nearlies and League Cup finals that hadn't happened. And it was just, when that Ramsey goal went in, was the biggest release of stress and anxiety of an Arsenal fan that I've ever felt in my entire life. And there's been some great games that we've witnessed, but just the whole, and with that one you get 120 minutes as well, not just 90. So, and the fact it happened, the fact that Yaya Sanogo was part of it as well, like, even that in itself, and Giroud's back heel for the Ramsey goal, like, and I'd look at Giroud as you were talking about Henry as underrated, but I look at Giroud as one of the most underrated players Arsenal ever had. So that in itself, and Ramsey, I loved Ramsey, and the fact that he won us 2 FA Cup finals as well was great. But yeah, I could watch that game forever.
Yeah, great choice. I mean, don't forget as well, we're nearly 3-0 down. We're just really close to being 3-0 down as well, which is, I mean, it's utterly, at the end. It was utterly mad, wasn't it? I mean, it was really strange though. I can remember vividly thinking that even that start we had in that match, I was still quite calm. I genuinely, and I can't understand why, because I'm quite a nervous watcher. I'm usually got my fingers down to stumps when I'm watching like Arsenal because I'm chewing my fingernails and stuff. Can't help myself. And I remember thinking, no, we've definitely got time. We've got to win this game. And yeah, it was just a fantastic ending.
Well, I mean, it was City, so you know,
I know.
You see it there, and you're like, this is Hull.
Bruce.
If we can't beat Hull, then we don't deserve any of this. Like it was a great game and a very much a landmark moment for us because, like you say, so many nearly run moments. But ultimately, going 2-0 down at that point, you've got to look around because I was having big issues with Wenger at that point as well. But you had to look around that squad and go, despite the way things are being managed here, some of you players need to take responsibility. This is Hull. You don't even need a world-class manager to beat Hull. Like, step up. And it was sanity in the end, you know, like people just stepping up and going, actually, I'm better than these guys, and turning it on. And it was a wonderful release when we finally came through.
And a really, really underrated goal as a cup final goal, Santi Cazorla's free kick.
Yeah,
I mean that's not spoken about enough. I mean that was an absolutely outstanding goal, wasn't it? You know,
well, that's a moment of magic where you literally separate yourself from the players who are looking around, you know, for someone to lead them, and then he picks the ball up. Yeah. He might not be big in stature, but he was big in terms of what he represented, and just went whack. There you go, mate. Top corner. Now everyone get their act together. You know what I mean? It was lovely to watch.
He didn't even properly sort of celebrate, did he? Really, I just remember him kissing his wrist, I think it was, and just going, you know, just running back. And yeah, I mean, what a guy! Like you said, small of stature but massive of heart. That guy, and skill and technical ability. What a brilliant player he was. So yeah, great choice, Tom. And what's yours, Johnny?
So I diced up between two with this now. Mine is kind of harking back to the whole issue that Tom's been referring to throughout the show about what age you were at when you were viewing these things. Now, I'd obviously say 89 for a game, you know, as an Arsenal fan to watch. Of course, it's a movie script, so why wouldn't you? And to have that beautiful ending with Michael Thomas doing the salmon flip after scoring, an expression of pure jubilation. Like, it's literally like he couldn't even program his own body to work anymore. He was just like, just be happy. And he went, whoa! And it was just great to watch. But because I was like 5 years old, and if I'm honest, not really even watching football that much at that point, I don't feel like I could necessarily have that game because whilst it is the greatest game in Arsenal's history, it didn't have the same effect for me because I didn't watch it at the right period of my life. So the game that I watched, it wasn't even a cup final. It was a moment where I saw what I believed our fates turning in terms of us moving into a different category of European club, world club. And that was the night we beat Barcelona 2-1 at the Emirates. And when they came to town, you are talking about the greatest club side ever assembled. That's how I see it. You know, with the best player of all time as well in town. And for us to set up shop with a young Jack Wilshere in the middle, Cesc Fabregas, who'd been leading us like valiantly all throughout the season, Samir Nasri, and we had the little Russian magician as well at that point to offer, because, you know, Andrei Arshavin stock just a couple of years before, he was like the hottest player in Europe. And at that point, like, you could not say, and we had Van Persie up front, and that, you know, I mean, like, when you look at a team like that now and look at perhaps where we are currently, you're like, wow. Like, I mean, we were spoiled for choices when it comes to creativity. There was just so many creative players trying to do the same thing. Now we can't find one for love and the money. You know what I mean?
We were laughed at. We had so many, weren't we? We kept collecting like really technical small number 10s and. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like we used up all our allocation for the years up to 2100, and we used them all up in the first 20 years, and now we're getting onto the next era. But no, for that moment when I was so impressed with the OA Arsenal when about that game, the highest level, as I say, playing against Iniesta, Xavi, you know, real classy operators. I thought it was the best game of Jack Wilshere's life and one of the best midfield performances I've ever seen anyone put in because he was rocking with them in that game. He wasn't, making up numbers. I thought he was the best player on the pitch. And for it to end in that way against a team that, was legitimately in their stride and is the best club team, and to end with a wonderful little break their hearts moment from Andre Arshavin, well, you just got to say that had me bouncing off my chair. I was absolutely on cloud nine.
Absolutely brilliant moment. What a moment it was. Yeah, it was. I mean, funnily enough, almost hair standing up on my arms. I think just thinking about that moment when the ball hit the back of the net. Incredible. Yeah, really, really good choice again. So I think one of the things, Andrew, with that as well is when you think about a goal. Sometimes with those moments when you watch them back and you know what's about to happen. So when you see that ball in the replay, when that ball comes in, Arshavin's going to be running in. It's that moment of anticipation which makes it so amazing. And that's why I think that game, at least, it draws emotions out of me that has to make me include it. Yeah, definitely. No, it's a great choice. And Russ Morgan, thanks for watching, Russ. He's put that his favourite goal of Thierry Henry was his solo effort against Liverpool in 2004. I mean, that was a brilliant goal as well. I mean, and the solo effort against Spurs. I mean, you could go on and on, couldn't you, about Thierry Henry's goals? Again, sport for choice. And he said Thierry isn't exactly a cult hero, as he's the best. That's why people tend to just overlook him a bit, which is what I'm trying to explain. It's hard to explain, but yeah, I think that's basically it. Now, in the next one, is a game that you would like to just delete from history. It's a game that you would like to send to hell, Room 101, if you will, as well, that you would just get rid of before you actually end up on Mesut Island.
I don't see how any Arsenal fan could choose. I don't see how any Arsenal fan could choose anything else, to be honest. I'll be interested to see if Johnny matches me. I have a temptation, I feel like he will. I've picked Paris because it's just the obvious. I just think that there is an argument to say that Arsenal being in a Champions League final is something that you should cherish and something that, whether no matter the result, is great. Listening to Arsene Wenger speak in his book about that kind of solidified that choice for me as well. Like the pure pain of that result. I was tempted to write off the semi-final against Manchester United because of I just felt we threw that away and we were utterly overblown by United in that game as well. But there's so much pain I associate with that game that carries on to arguments with rival fans, and especially Chelsea fans that have the cheek to talk about the worst Champions League side to ever win the competition. It just really rubs me up the wrong way when Chelsea fans talk about the Champions
under
League.
A crap caretaker manager.
And so it's an interesting one. When you wipe that game from history, there's two schools of thought, I suppose. When you can either say you're wiping it never existed, or you're saying that, do we wish there could have been, or you could rerun it and have a different result? And I suppose that might make up your choice, but I've chosen that because it is the most painful memory as an Arsenal fan that I've got. So I think it would make sense for me to wipe it.
Basically, what I try and mean by this choice is so that you haven't got to feel that pain about that game anymore. It's like it never, because it never existed. It's not there. But do you know why I would differ, and I don't choose that one? Is because I was so proud of the team at that point to get there, which sounds a bit cheesy, I know, but also that moment when Sol Campbell scored was a moment of pure, probably one of the happiest and most exhilarating I've felt, during an Arsenal game as well, which I wouldn't want to lose either. But obviously I ain't got to explain why I understand and agree that it was so painful, but the fact that we got there and I was so proud of them at the time, and they didn't let us down. I know that Thierry Henry missed that chance, as you talked about earlier, Johnny. He was dead on his legs, if you remember. He literally was absolutely knackered. I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's good points about the game, which is what I'm trying to say, that I still think fondly of, as well as having that pain. So that's why I'd go a bit different. But what's yours, Johnny?
Well, I agree with you in terms of Paris. I think there was, the scorpion sting in the tail, but ultimately it's still our greatest performance ever in the Champions League. So I wouldn't, I know you've almost acknowledged that, Tom, in your answer, but I certainly wouldn't strike it from history, because until we can say that we've won one, that's the best we've ever done in the Champions League. Yeah. And the other thing about it is the level of opponent. So we lost valiantly that day, to a very, very good team. And, there's no shame to losing to Barcelona, even, at full strength. But to do it like that and to nearly get over the line, I didn't feel any shame that day, just disappointment.
You're better than the therapist I hired afterwards.
Probably cheaper as well. But in terms of game for me, it's interesting the route you've gone down, Tom. But for me, it's a quite obvious one. It's Manchester United 8-2.
Yeah,
that even to say that out loud, it upsets me. I will never. And to be fair, there are a lot of things that we would thank Wenger for and look back well on his legacy. I will never forgive him for that game. That was absolutely appalling. The standard, and he has to take responsibility for it. Of course, the players as well. But when you're a manager, there are times where you can put the brakes on and just say, this is full on. I mean, don't get me wrong, Wenger treated us to some horrific beatings over a 3 or 4 year period. It was just really, really hard to watch. But at 8-2, you're going into the game. This is what used to hurt the most as an Arsenal fan. When commentators and, professionals are saying, Arsenal might have a chance this year. So putting us on a kind of even parity with United, these people we're going to face. So you're expecting, at the worst, you're going to get a 2-0 defeat, 3-0 defeat. Oh, that was a bit of a chastening experience. 8-2. Are you kidding me? Are you absolutely kidding me? Getting smacked up like that. What is going on with you guys? It's shameful. Yeah. How have we even got that in our history books, in our annuals? We have to have that written 8-2. In modern times, it's an absolute disgrace. Honestly, I haven't got over that. And I mean, I've got United. When you have United friends who don't even want to take the piss after because it's just full on it's an embarrassment. That is something else, And I had mates who were just I don't even know where to start with a banter. That is bad, So.
Change my answer.
You may, yeah. I when I did my choices at the beginning of this Mesut Island this series, that was mine as well, and I can't ever get over that either. And I think the day that happened, a bit of Arsenal died, and we haven't been the same since. And I think the same thing with Wenger.
Again and again and again.
Yeah, honestly, I think Wenger lost something that day as well. The whole club did. I think it was a categorical line in the sand of our rivalry with Man United being categorically over, although it had been for a few years, but there was no more. It had gone. And it was it felt like you said, Johnny, I haven't got over it yet, and I still haven't. I'm getting angry now. Honestly, it was like I was punched in the stomach that day, and winded. It was horrendous, absolutely horrendous. It was so embarrassing, considering all the great battles we had against them in years gone by, and beating them in the tunnel, and oh no, if I could get rid of one, it's definitely that. There's no doubt in my mind.
I mean, part of it as well, when we talk about Wenger's role in it, what I was kind of getting at before is, as a manager, there has to be things you can do when things are getting so out of hand. At 5-1, that's a horrible. No one's sleeping that night. It's extra shifts the next day. But surely you just go, no more goals. No more goals. This is ridiculous. Everyone behind the ball. It's an awful game. No one's going to be sending me flowers after this. I won't get absolutely, ravaged. But he didn't. He just let them keep. And that is just 8 goals.
I mean,
it's so bad.
The excuse a lot of the time is that we were seriously ravaged by injury that day, and the team we put out, if you have a look back at the lineup, it's horrific. You shouldn't be anywhere near an Arsenal team. However, the fact that we weren't buying enough players at that particular point and replenishing, getting some defenders and getting a strong midfielder, like we were waiting for donkey's years to replace, Vieira and get a good. That's his fault as well, so we can't take anything away from Wenger that day. And there was no fight, there was no pride or battling sort of will to at least go out and injure some people, say, look, I'm not taking no more. Like you said, I think we missed a penalty as well, didn't we, at 2-1 down? I seem to remember. I think Van Persie missed a penalty.
At that point, we were... we were trying to give a game of it at that, but this is what I mean. I mean, it turned around in one half as well. That just completely got away from us, and that for me kind of encapsulated. We might touch on this in one of the future questions, but that moment where Wenger really lost the mental side of the game, the mentality had gone from him, and then later into a succession of his teams. He exposed the mental fragility within himself that was always there, like a thumbprint on his teams, that in big moments they would crumble. And that went all the way through till the cup final we were talking about before. I mean, we're talking, over Femi Martins in a League Cup final. Like, how can you lose that game and stuff? And for me, that was the moment, like around the 8-2, where the shine started to come away. When I talked about earlier about it was a wonderful period with the, in the on repeat years where every team you were playing, you knew, we'll do these. At that point, it started to become, I don't know what we're getting each week. So,
Well, I ate to think about that. So we're going to move on from that one. Sorry for that. That's terrible. Absolutely terrible. I do apologise. Right. Next category is actually going into the musical side of things of the Desert Island. It's a song. And Tom, I like to sort of try and think of the whole Wenger era as a whole, really, because it's a lot of people, cut it down into two, half or even thirds sometimes. So, when you think back to the Wenger era, what song, best encapsulates that for you, the way you feel about it?
I have to say that the whole concept of basing things off a song is genuinely one of the hardest things I've ever had to do.
I know.
Trying to think and put it together. And I've gone down the route of I chose September by Earth, Wind and Fire. Based on the two famous lines from the song saying, do you remember the 21st night of September? Now, the 21st of September, if people remember, is the day that we drew 0-0 at Old Trafford in 2003. This is the level that I went to.
Wow, bloody hell! That's incredibly impressive.
I mean, I think it was more so I really liked the song, and so I was just trying to find a way to but going through that analytic, I mean, I always overanalyze things on the channel, as you know. But in looking at those words of firstly about remembering what he did. And looking at that game specifically, and that game symbolises in itself, I think, a lot of Wenger's era, which was just stubbornness, and Arsenal were not going to lose that game to the point where even the frame of the goal was going to prevent us from losing that game. And that in itself was kind of bleeds into the stubbornness of Wenger remaining at the club as long as that he did. And it's still a very cheerful song, and there's a lot of really happy times to look back on under Arsene Wenger. But it linked perfectly into that game, which is one of the ones that was up there I wouldn't necessarily say it's one I'd watch forever, back to our first question, but that specific moment, the last 10 minutes is one of the 10 minutes you'd watch forever.
Mad, I know.
So September, Earth, Wind and Fire for Wenger.
Great. No, that's good. Excellent. Yeah. And what about you, Jody?
Well, Andrew and Tom, I think I've taken this in a slightly... the thing is, you wonderfully summed that up, Tom, in terms of Wenger's differing emotions that he draws out of you. And I didn't want to be kind of flippant about all he's achieved and all the good moments, but for me, the whole experience went on way too long. And I do remember, some amazing times that he brought to the club, and will always deserve the respect that he gets for those. But those dark years, I mean, years and years after he should have left. And for me, it was Water Runs Dry by Boyz II Men. Don't wait for the water to run dry. But the thing about the song is actually a song about a couple that have been in love and have very much, been important parts of each other's lives, but they're basically just going through the motions at that point, and they've let the water run dry, and then ultimately they've stayed in a relationship that wasn't working for too long. And I think if Wenger had left earlier, it would be easier to talk completely positively about his legacy. But unfortunately, he did stick around too long. And I do think that a lot of the problems that we're still currently facing in the current squad was actually due to him staying on so long. Because I think the rebuild job would have been a lot easier to perform and manageable due to some of the excellent coaches that were available at the time. Had Wenger gone, say, when Guardiola was available and or Klopp. And so we would have found ourselves in a much more positive and beneficial position if he had gone earlier. But he didn't, alas. And unfortunately, the water did run dry.
Yeah, no, another great choice. Yeah, like I said, there's no rules about any of these questions. It's what it sort of means to you. I mean, I can't help but look back because I'm significantly older than both of you, but 47, and I started the first full match I watched from start to finish was the 1980 Cup final when we lost to West Ham 1-0. And I still stayed an Arsenal fan, which is like a stupid thing to do. But so I've seen some dross in my time, as well as some great times as well. But when he came along and we started to click and get into like the 1998 sort of team, I never dreamt that I would ever see an Arsenal team playing football like that. So my main overriding memories of Arsene Wenger are undoubtedly positive for me. And my choice was What a Wonderful World by, it's actually the Ramones, Joey Ramone version, because I love the just personal choice. I love the Joey Ramone version of that one. But it just remembered thinking back to what joy I saw from the North Bank and back at Highbury and stuff. I never thought I'd watch football like that. I've said this a few times, so apologies for people that have watched this week in, week out, but I remember more vividly where a corner kick to our opposition was a goal scoring opportunity for us because we were that deadly. 6 seconds, 7 seconds, we ball would be in the back of their net. It was brilliant. It was breathtaking and exhilarating, and I just want to remember that football because it was the best I've ever seen. I don't think I've ever seen any team in any country or play football like that at its best. It was so exciting to watch, wasn't it? And just try and remember those days more than anything else.
And I appreciate that you guys are being put like. It feels harsh being critical of Wenger at times, especially now he's gone. But ultimately, I think when we remember someone's legacy, you have to look at the whole body of work, and you can't just cherry. But it's like we might often do when people die in life, and you think, "Oh, what a great bloke," and then you actually go, "Well, was he?" There was some bad days. You know what I mean? So I'm just trying to be kind of a holistic approach to all of his work, and there's no question that he was our greatest ever manager, but there were some very dark moments, as was borne out in the discussion around 8-2. I mean, who does that? Should have lost a job on the spot. And in general, to give him the credit he deserves with the highs, he has to take responsibility for the lows.
This is the good thing about this show is that everyone is different and everyone thinks about things in different ways. And I wouldn't, it'd be boring if we all thought about things the same way, wouldn't it? Which is why it's so good. And I totally understand your point of view, 100%, Johnny. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. So another good choice. And we're moving on to God, I don't even like calling it an era. And to be honest, if I could change the third question from the game to send to hell, I would send the era to hell. But the next one is a song that reminds you most about the Emery era that we went through, Tom. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. I'd be interested to hear.
Yeah, I'm a big Foles fan, and their most recent album had a song on it called "The Runner," and I just felt that this song was kind of, because it's all about, there's a line in it called which goes, "The loneliness of the long distance runner," which is kind of how I felt the end of the Emery era felt, is that whilst, and how, Johnny, you've kind of summed up some of maybe the less glamorous sides of Wenger's tenure, the 8-2 specifically, but towards the end of Unai's time has to be one of the loneliest periods for a manager ever. He's in a country where he's not fluent in the language. He's in a place where the players at this point have completely disengaged with him, and we were very split amongst the fan base towards the Wenger's era, and there's still some people that would, a lot of people that would turn around and say that maybe Wenger shouldn't have ever left, but there was pretty much no one campaigning for Emery to remain at the club by the time we did make the decision. And also the song being called "The Runner" is that when he came in and you watch some of his training videos, that's all he felt like he did with our players. Just run, guys. Just run for 90 minutes. And that's why I've picked that song. And it just, the Emery era in general era, as you said, it's...
Yeah, you have to use quotation marks for that.
Yeah, I kind of look back on it now as a bit of a necessary evil, I think, to get us to the point of rock bottom so that we could take a risk and go for someone like Arteta, which we'll come on to a second, I'm sure.
It's really funny, Andrew, that Tom said that. A necessary evil, because I've gone for "It's Not Right, But It's Okay" by Whitney Houston.
That's brilliant.
Very much so when we talk about necessary evils. That was not a right period. It was so much wrong with what was going on under Emery. And the saddest thing is, we don't necessarily think about when we look back at Emery, but it started off in pretty positive fashion. Like Emery came in, and it did feel like we were starting to move in a direction. Like towards the end of the Wenger era, one of the things that fans had enough and wanted to see a change on was our performance in big games, like tournaments. We needed to be challenging in Europe. We're in Europa League again. It made sense that their most successful, the competition's most successful manager would come in. And also, defensively, by the end of the Wenger era, we were absolutely all over the gaff. And we needed someone to come in and instill some defensive shape and structure and make us defend better. That didn't happen, okay? But in general, that was at least our aim to be achieved, which we didn't achieve. But as Tom laid out, even though by the end, and I do think that the landmark moment, and I used to talk about this and very much watch my tongue on Arsenal Nation when I was doing the games, was around the end of that season, that first season for Emery. And you look back now and realise that if we had won one game out of like Brighton at home, and I think I can't even remember now, Crystal Palace at home, you win one of them and you're in the top four. And he fielded weakened teams, and then ultimately with a chance instead to go away to Wolves to try and get a win there, and or win the Europa League, Leicester. And to have bottled it in both competitions. Absolutely. The moment that happened, and I worked the Europa League game, and I was struggling to, contain what I wanted to say, because the reality is he should have been sacked on the spot. It was unforgivable, and he's blown it. And ultimately, it isn't right, but it's okay, because we needed to clear the deck and then come back and maybe, as you said, take a punt with a new manager and a new vision and a new direction, hopefully, for the club.
Yeah, I just told you how long I've been a fan a few minutes ago, excuse me. And it was the lowest I've ever felt as an Arsenal fan, the end of that season. That run-in, I've never felt as bad, and I went through the Terry Neal years, you know what I mean? I went through some absolute appalling, years. I've never felt quite so depressed. And what the problem is, I made the mistake, right? Because when he came in, and he was announced, it was a bit of a surprise to all of us, wasn't it? He wasn't really being talked about by anyone. So I didn't know much about the guy, and because what I like to do is not just read stories about him that are written by journalists who he's probably friends with. I read some of the what fans were saying about him, and I was put off right from the word go. So I felt bad because I felt negative about him from the moment he actually got the job because of reading all these reports from the fans and stuff. And it was all proven right. And the weird thing is, from all of his previous clubs, including Paris Saint-Germain, where he's probably the only manager, I think, in the last decade who hasn't won the league with PSG. You know, he even lost the league there in the one-horse race.
He did win it the other year though with PSG.
I know, but there was one season he didn't know, which is unbelievable.
He missed it. Yeah.
But everything that he did in his at Sevilla and PSG were exactly the same as it ended up with us, and it was it's horrific. You know, and that final, I just never. In fact, that's right up there actually for a game to send to hell. It was just so bad, so bad.
That was bad. That was bad. I nearly had tears in my eyes. You can still see the footage actually on Arsenal.
I don't know how you held it together.
I was absolutely fuming. Just had to wrap the questions up really quickly. I think there were people jumping in there halfway through my answers. Just come on, let's get him out of here. They were doing the Gary Lineker with Gascoigne. Hey, keep eyes on him. Keep eyes on him. He's losing it. I mean, it was a tough one. It was a real tough one.
Because I maintain, right, that we went in at half time, and if it was a boxing match, we would be slightly ahead on points at half time in that final. I think we just slightly edged it, maybe. And that's where a manager that's paid multi-million pounds a year, that at half-time team talk in a game like that, that's where you earn your money, and that's why you pay the top dollar.
Yeah.
And what happened in that half-time, we will never know, maybe. But we came out and conceded, within a minute or two, didn't we? And just capitulated. Well, there's no excuse for that at all.
I think it spoke to how the players were feeling about the coach and the prospect of a future under him. When you compare it to a Chelsea team who were our opponents that day, who were just a ragtag band of mercenaries. You know, we sold them our striker in January to get another one. You know, he's coming in scoring goals against us. They had one player really who of world-class quality who was there to hurt us and did end up hurting us. But, you know, just the meek, lily-livered performances all over the pitch. Players that we were revering, I think that is a black mark against all of their names, because anyone on that pitch, it was so poor. And when you got kids coming on at the end who just think, oh, well, I'll just give it a go, and they're tearing it up. And you go, look, these guys aren't even, you know, it's not Messi out here. It's just people like Joe Willock willing to give it a go and suddenly looking a bit dangerous. It's unacceptable. Ultimately, if you can't get your players up for a job that he must have known was going to be, you know, determine whether he stayed in the job or not. If you can't get your players up for that, it's best you leave.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that Raul, oh my God, I'm going to bite my tongue, but the fact that he was going to give him a new contract after that game, I mean, what? Seriously, I mean, he just better hope I never see him in the street. That Raul, you know,
is he a regular around? Is he a regular around your way, Raul Sanley?
He's often down Hinckley High Street. Yeah, going in.
Hello, Raul, mate. You're right.
I see him popping into Timpson's every now and then to get his soles done and his shoes.
Yeah, absolutely.
But he gets like the big platforms to make him look bigger. But what an idiot! And the Watford game at the beginning of the next season, another massive low. I mean, that's second half of that. That's the worst I've ever seen Arsenal play in my life. Remember that game when we had 32 shots against us against Watford when we were 2-0 up at half time. Oh, Jesus Christ! Anyway, less said about that, the better. We move on. And now we are towards the end now. We've got the Arteta era and a song that best sort of sums up what there's obviously a very small so far under Arteta. But so you're going to have to predict a little bit, but how your thoughts are and how things may go and how you hope they may go under Arteta, Tom. So what would be the song that would describe your feelings about that?
Now I don't. This song is very much from my youth, ish. He's not really heard of that much anymore. It doesn't really do too much. But I've gone for Kickstarts by Example.
Yeah. No, good one. Yeah, I saw him in a festival a couple of years ago in Coventry. Yeah, he's still good. He's still good.
I ever went to see live. I was one of those losers that sat in the stands, not even like in the crowds. Like that's of that age, and it's changed very much different these days. But the song Kickstarts when it's just saying like the love kickstarts again. That kind of sums up how I feel about Arteta. Just getting that identity back, someone that I feel just kind of encapsulated in his first press conference exactly what I wanted the managers that took over Arsene Wenger to do, to just lay things out that this isn't good enough, what's going on, this is what we're going to do, and if you're not going to get with the programme, then you can go. And that is what he's started to do with Mesut Ozil and Matteo Guendouzi, these players that have shown him up at times that have behaved inappropriately or not done enough to convince him. He is making the decisions, more so of Matteo Guendouzi. I think there's more to Ozil, but we could talk for an entire podcast about Mesut Ozil at the end of the day. But there is just an element to me that thinks that give this guy time, give him the backing, and arguably Arsenal have got one of the most exciting young coaches around. And that's why it pains me so much when I see so much vitriol on social media about him already at this early stage. And it's after a loss against Aston Villa, after he just got us our first victory at Old Trafford since 2006 and our first win against the Big Six side since 2015. And I'm starting to feel that connection with the club that I haven't had in that same kind of real connected fashion since we were winning trophies under Arsene Wenger at the end, partly towards the end, and then it kind of trailed off again. But yeah, it's just nice having that identity back at the club, having people that were part of the club with him and Per and Edu. It's just great to have identity back, and that love is kickstarting again within the club.
I think that's a great choice. Yeah, and that's why I love watching your channel so much, is because I think we really. I don't think I've ever come across you saying anything that I disagree with. I think we've got very similar views, and I feel exactly the same way about that. And can you imagine a more difficult start to a managerial career than he's had? Absolutely unbelievable. Coming in at the worst time, which is the Christmas schedule for a start, and then COVID happening and losing 3 months. So basically, he's not even been in charge. He started his first game was Boxing Day, wasn't it, last year? Yeah. And so it's not even 11 months yet. Not even 11 months, and he lost 3 of those months to COVID. He got COVID, crying out loud, as well. He actually had it, and then he's not had a pre-season.
I mean, what more can you ask?
He's not had a pre-season. I mean, that's the thing, right? And just quickly, I do apologise, Johnny. I'll come to you in a second, but that's what sets him aside from being a really potential great coach. Is the fact that what he's done with that defence, that were conceding 32 shots to Watford in 1 half of football, or whatever, near enough. What he did to those, he shows that he's a very, very good coach. And when you actually put him against, and please don't say I'm comparing him to this guy, but when you look at Pep Guardiola, for example, who you worked under, I don't see someone that really improves players. I see someone that puts great players on the pitch and gets them well organised, but I don't see him improving players. And what I mean by that is, because he's always had fairly, if there's one criticism, his defence is always fairly a little bit weak, maybe, and he overthinks, overtinkers. But when he's got a poor defence, he doesn't improve those defenders. He just discards them and goes out and buys another one for 60 million quid. I think, he spent 400 million or something the last I read, that just on the defence. just on the defence since he's been at Man City. And that doesn't tell me that he's a great coach and he can improve players. But what Mikel Arteta's done with the same group of players that were literally heading towards the bottom three when he took over is fantastic. And that fills me full of confidence. And I think we had 8 games in the Premier League so far, a few cup games, obviously. So maybe, I don't know, just off the top of my head, for argument's sake, say 15 games ago, he won us the FA Cup, for crying out loud. People weren't moaning about him or, saying he was disputing how good he is as a coach then, were they? I mean, when he was holding the FA Cup aloft. So, yeah, I really hope that he gets a lot of time, and I hope people back off him a bit. Because he's still learning the job and he still hasn't had much time with the players on the training pitch, as they really no, like I said, no pre-season. Right, so apologies, Johnny. I'll completely rambling as I normally do on this show. But yeah, what's your choice for the Arteta era?
So kind of like the Wenger one, I think the times have changed. It's a bit of a weird time, I should say, with the Arteta era, because we've suddenly come into a bit of a negative period where he hit the heights of the FA Cup, but currently right now it does feel a little flat. That result against Villa at the weekend, or a couple of weekends ago, was a very, very poor result. There's no other way to look at it. And so in the toss-up of thinking what song I'd do, I didn't know whether I would have a little tinge of negativity about the song choice, as I did with the Wenger years, with regards to Water Runs Dry. But in the end, I plumped for a more positive outlook on the Arteta song, and I've gone with Jess Glynn, Ain't Got Far to Go, because we are a work in progress, and there are some serious questions now that Arteta is going to have to find answers for in short order, because I know you've said there about like not having a pre-season, but actually you could argue he's had the longest pre-season in football history. Like, in terms of
not on a training pitch, working with the players. I don't.
I appreciate the point that you're making, but if you think about it, with Arteta being a very analytical mind, very tactical coach, and someone who likes to watch video and formulate strategies with the players, you don't even need to be on the same pitch for them to be able to translate some tactical ideas. You can do that over Zoom. You can get some video. So there are, in terms of getting your ideas in terms of a team setup over to players, I think he's had a longer period to bed in some ideas than what we might think in terms of off the cuff. However, and sorry, I should just say on that, the reason why that's an issue is because the biggest criticism Arteta's facing at the moment is we have become far more defensively solid, and it is a pleasure to watch, because that is what was actually, killing us before as Arsenal fans, watching that soft underbelly in Arsenal teams that Emery was presented and obviously has carried on for the Wenger era. But for now, Arteta has to work on getting some attacking coherency, because if you think about it, of course, our cup final was a real high point and it was a real badge of honour for his career. But we haven't played good football for a while now. Let's be honest about it. How many games under Arteta have you looked at it and gone, we were dynamite? And, it has not been a year. But ultimately, when you're talking about nearly a year, I'd like to now start seeing more in terms of attacking coherency, so we can go and set about maybe the smaller teams and actually feel confident that we're going to have enough to break them down. I don't think that's too much to ask at this stage, to at least see more progression in that front alone. But that being said, I don't actually think it's too far to go, because I do think we have a lot of the players to get that done. And I just think that Arteta needs to relieve the almost mental handbrake that he has as well, because he had so much work to do to get us defensively sound, that at some point, when you sign in world-class players like Partey, trust some of these players to actually be robust enough to, buffet away the attacks of the other teams, and then let our attacking players have the freedom and creativity to go and destroy teams. Because I do think the talent is mostly there. We might need an odd, addition, but Arteta does need to get us improved from an attacking point of view.
I totally agree. I mean, I've been saying the same since that, a couple of games ago myself. But I think it happened at the best time. That defeat. Sometimes you've got to take your hat off to the opposition as well, because I think Villa were absolutely outstanding on the day. Hit us from the first minute. That goal was, I think if the stupid offside law helped us out that day, but I think anyone knows that he wouldn't have saved that in a million years. Brilliant goal. And from the first moment, they played the game perfectly, and they just knocked the stuffing out of us, and we never recovered. And it was a very poor performance, but you've got to give awful lot of credit to Villa on the day. But I think it happened at a great time with the 2-week international break, because he would have been stewing on that. I think he's got an elite mentality, Arteta, and I think it would have really hurt him, that defeat. And I think he would have been. He's going to be absolutely determined, to put things right. So hopefully these 2 weeks have been a good time for him to get that sorted. Yeah. But with regards to that 3 months, when he said that he had the longest pre-season ever, well, when they did come back, he did go on and win the FA Cup. So that's not too bad an achievement, really, after that extended break. But
absolutely, but you'd also
I do agree with what you're saying. Absolutely,
from an attacking point of view, like we look toothless, and it's not one-off games. It's every game now. Even our wins, we're like nicking goals and hanging on. And I'd like to see. We should have progressed more than we've gone backwards from an attacking point of view, no question. As much as we've improved defensively, and so he does need to start focusing on that now, and we need to see more results.
I totally agree. I don't think anyone can disagree with that at all. We're going to have to sort of speed things up, because I know that we've got a time schedule to keep. So the next one is a film, which is, I think this is the hardest question of all, personally. But it's a film that would encapsulate your Arsenal supporting life. Tom, what would you sort of come up with for that encapsulates all your feelings about being an Arsenal fan? It's a tough one, I don't know.
So cheesy. This is so cheesy. I've gone for Avengers Endgame as my choice of film. Because for me, Arsenal, it's not necessarily about the football. It's not necessarily what happens on the pitch. It's Arsenal encapsulates everything for me in terms of like a massive social side of things. It's Arsenal for me is about meeting people. Arsenal for me is about meeting new people like yourself, Andrew, which is the first time I've spoken to you face to face today, which is great, and yourself, Johnny, too. And like Arsenal for me is always about extending that family that I've built up through the channel, the Gooner Talk, and meeting fellow podcasters, meeting former players, just that whole point of everyone coming together for a good cause right at the end of the film. And that's always, and when starting out podcasting years ago on Burkamp Wonderland, and then growing through people knowing through there, and then going to do the Gooner Talk, and just gradually knowing people who went on Arsenal Fan TV. And no matter what you think of the platform, not even I'm the biggest fan of it, but some of the people on there are really nice guys, like Lee Judges, for instance, and like just meeting people and everyone coming together to go for a pint before and after a game is just the best thing about it. Like Arsenal can lose, and I can deal with that and it's easier when I go to the games to deal with, because I know I'm going to the pub afterwards to see a lot of people that I really enjoy the time with. So Arsenal for me goes well beyond just what happens in those 90 minutes, and it is about experiencing it. And part of the reason why I do the channel as well is that for the thousands of people that watch, is that they come and they interact in a level-headed way. And especially like Andrew, yourself, who's become a member of the channel as well. Like the member group is great, and all of them guys are so good, and their knowledge is great, and just experiencing other opinions. Because if there's one thing you get guaranteed with Arsenal, it's a wealth of different opinions. So it's all about community for me with Arsenal, and that kind of sums it up.
So if it's the Avengers, which one are you?
Brilliant.
Oh, that's a good
on the spot.
No, I did nearly shed a tear when the old Tony Stark died, so I suppose I connect
I know.
with him. So probably Mr. Iron Man.
Iron Man, fair enough.
He's brilliant.
I mean, you have to have iron skin to be on social media with Arsenal.
Very true.
And you've got loads of money as well, yeah?
But okay, I'll change my answer.
Listen, Tom, I know you've got to go very, very shortly to go and, got an appointment. Just give us two quick things, right? The one is your luxury item, and two, just answer a question that we've had in the chat from Miss Melina, who says, do you think that we can use Coutinho on loan in the upcoming transfer window?
I don't think Ronald Koeman has any interest in letting Coutinho go now at all. I think Coutinho could have gone before he had that amazing sort of end of his stint to his loan at Bayern Munich, and then Koeman kind of realised that, hey, I can use this guy. I don't think he has any intention. He's been injured for a few weeks as well, so Coutinho isn't going to be going anywhere. If you're looking at anyone for a loan, we were talking about on the show earlier, Christian Eriksen is a really interesting guy to look at as a loan. I wouldn't go for a permanent deal. If we haven't got the money to spend in January, which is, as far as I'm aware, Arsenal are going to be a bit cash strapped this January up until players like Ozil, Mustafi and Socrates and Luiz, all their contracts come to an end in the summer, where Arsenal's purse strings can loosen a little bit. I'd look at that as a possible loan deal to add some creativity to the team. I don't think it's realistic in terms of a social level, because I don't think Eriksen would do that. But Coutinho, no chance. And then you say luxury item that I would take. If you could take a luxury, because this is what they have on the other show that obviously is nowhere near as good as this one. But they say you can have a luxury item with you on the desert island. It doesn't have to be Arsenal related. It could be anything. I was going to say it'd have to be on my laptops.
Bearing in mind you haven't got power, so you can't take a phone or a computer or anything because you ain't going to have electricity.
Okay. Oh, that's really tough. I definitely should have prepared for that one.
I'm pretty sure Iron Man has his own unique power source that he can just run your laptop.
Tap into that.
Exactly,
surely.
Off the little bulb in the middle of your chest, just run it off that. Universal adapter.
Solar powered suit.
What a superhero. He's got a bulb in his chest. That's what we go for.
You haven't got to answer that. You haven't got to answer that, Tom, if you don't want to.
No, it's not. I don't want to. It's just it's such a difficult question. I think that I'd go for something really stupid like a pinball machine, just to keep me entertained, and just because I need that self-competition. So it'd have to be a pinball machine that didn't have any power, of course, but somehow kept the score up, just so I could continue to try and outscore myself, because I'm so competitive. And if I'm there alone, I still need some form of competition. So probably something like that. Yeah. And there's actually...
That's a good answer.
There's also, you find those footballs that you get in the elastic string that goes with them, so you can just do keepy up easy and stuff like that. One of those would be quite good. So yeah, that's something.
That's a good idea.
That keeps me entertained. Would be what it would be.
A hacky sack. Do you remember those hacky sacks? Oh, you're probably too young.
I barely remember what I had for breakfast.
You're too young for a hacky sack. But no. Anyway, Tom, I really appreciate it. I know you've got to run.
No problem, mate.
Thank you ever so much for coming on. I really, really appreciate it. I hope it won't be the last time. And I think you've had some brilliant choices today. So thank you ever so much.
Nice one, Tom.
Pleasure. Cheers, guys. Honestly, I really appreciate your help on the channel and subscribing and everything. So appreciate that. And Johnny, an absolute pleasure to meet you and speak to you. So yeah, top stuff.
Yeah, hopefully do it again soon.
Thank you.
For sure.
Take care.
See you later, boys. Have a good one.
Right. Thank you, Johnny. Have you got just a couple more minutes then for your last couple of answers? Is that all right?
Yeah. So mine, in terms of film, would be a trilogy, Lord of the Rings. I think it's encapsulated a little bit by Gollum in terms of he has this ring, and this ring that he has is both the fuel to his life. It's what drives him, and obviously gives him so much pleasure, so much so that he calls it his precious. And football is precious for those moments that it gives us. But in a catch-22 situation, when it comes to his precious, it also has a negative effect of kind of damaging his overall outlook and appearance to the world, because he can't help control himself. The lust for the pleasure that his precious brings him actually can cause some great harm, and he can no longer even see it anymore. Now, I don't want to. This isn't a cry for help, but I think what we've talked about is some of the highs and lows that football can give you, and that's it. And there are moments where it feels very precious, and there's other moments where we've all been given experiences that we'd just like to forget, quite frankly. And even even that moment where you have to stop taking football so seriously because it affects your mood. I know I've been there, and I know a lot of people have, because it can get pretty horrible in terms of when you feel that invested in it, to just have your dreams crushed. And you've got to remember that it's sport at the end of the day, and you take the rough with the smooth. But I think to kind of surmise that gift and the curse kind of element of football, I think the precious for Gollum is probably that.
Do you know what? I think I don't know how many of these shows I've done. I don't know. I'll have to look back through the back catalogue of Mesut Island Discs, but I think that's probably one of my favourite answers. I think that's brilliant. Really, really good answer. It's perfect. Yeah, I can't even add anything to that. It's just a really good choice. Excellent. And did you see this little thing at the end when I sent over the questions about the luxury item? Or has that come as a surprise to you as well?
Yeah, surprise to me, but I could do it anyway. If we're going to do an Arsenal one, what do I...
It doesn't have to be Arsenal. It'd be anything.
Well, I mean, the obvious answer would be a football then, for similar reasons to Tom for, but in terms of entertaining myself and it being football, which is my greatest hobby, the lack of power on this island to not power my Xbox means that my choices are narrowed. But yeah, I would think that. I think of football because it would be one of those items that could give you something new every day, as opposed to a book. It's going to be the same words every day. A football, you can do different things with it, more dynamic.
Yeah, definitely. Fantastic. Yeah, well, you can also put a bloody face on the front of it as well and call it Wilson.
Exactly. Then you got mate. You got mate. Yeah. Well, the problem is you and Wilson can't play football together because Wilson is the ball. So it's a shame. Really.
Fantastic. Listen, for those that are got some comments in the comment section, I'm just going to go through those in a short while, if you bear with me for 1 second. But in the meantime, I'm just going to say a massive thank you to Johnny, and what a great show it's been. I hope you've enjoyed yourself, and hope that you hope it won't be the last time you come on again as well. I just want to thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's been great. It's nice to talk to some fellow Gooners, and true to fact. There's a lot to be looking forward to as an Arsenal fan at the moment, and the more conversation we have around Arsenal is always a good thing. So thank you, Andrew.
No problem. Well, I hope to keep in touch with you, and as I say, maybe see you again in the future. But thanks ever so much for your time, Johnny.
Sounds
appreciate
good.
it.
Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Take care. Well, thank you everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed that show. I really did, and some really good choices. I know that they were over slightly, and I know that they had some things that they had to go and run off to. So I thank them ever so much for their time. Now, just a quick go through these really good comments that are coming in from everyone. Thank you ever so much. Russ said, "Do you think we had Cesc, Nasri, Arshavin, and Rosicki at the club at the same time? So much talent. It's just think about it now. It's just mad that we are affecting that style of player to having none virtually at the moment. So it's just a crazy situation." And Russ, you also said that if we had 11 men on the pitch for the entire match of the Champions League final, there's no doubt in my mind we would have won that Champions League final. I totally agree. I don't think there's much argument with that, to be honest with you. I really do as well. And I think the fact that Henry missed that last chance there where he was clean through because he'd been knackered. I genuinely think, and I think he said afterwards in interviews that he was absolutely knackered, could barely run, and that was because of the extra running he had to do because of the player we had sent off, man down, and all the extra running that the team had to do as a result. Arteta was too pragmatic. It would be nice to be at home and approach games on the front foot. See, this is what I've been talking about for as long as I can remember as well, that I just wish we didn't. What I see as an inferiority complex coming up against other teams, that was the biggest reason I really disliked the Emery era, as well as we were entering all games with that kind of inferiority complex, whereby instead of forcing our style onto the opposition like we did under Prime Wenger, we should always pay the opposition respect, clearly, but not too much. You know, we've got to say to ourselves, we should be beating these teams and be more confident and more assertive. That was Arsenal for the last couple of decades previously, and it's just seems to have disappeared. So yeah, I totally agree. I want us to not be completely and utterly no, but just let the players express themselves more on the pitch and really take our game to them, and yeah, just really attack. Be more inventive with the attacking as well. And I don't want Arteta to stand too much on the sidelines telling him exactly which pass to make every single opportunity. I want him just go and sit down a little while, Mikel. Just go and take the weight off your feet and let the players get on with it. That's what I want as well. Great panel on the show today. I thank you ever so much for listening. I thank you. Hope you've enjoyed it. I'm sure as much as I have. Iron Man, you have to be bulletproof on Twitter. That's a very, very good point. You really do. You have to have a very thick, bulletproof skin. And Szoboszlai, I think is how you pronounce it. I would love to get that guy in January. Do you know what? I've got a sneaky suspicion we might. I really have. I'm probably going to end up being wrong. May get egg on my face, but I think we might go for someone like that in January, because the more and more he plays this season, the better he gets. The goals he scored for Hungary recently, reminiscent of Thierry Henry, you know, the Spurs goal, you know, it's fantastic. It was his price is only going to go up and up. Oh, sorry, he's got this release clause, of course, but sorry, his suitors are only going to go up and up. The clubs that are going to be after him, and I don't think we should wait until summer. I think if we're going to go for him, January's got to be the time where we just trigger his release clause and try and steal a march on, you know, the competition for his signature. Personally, so there you go. So thank you for everyone watching. Tomorrow we've got our normal regular show, 8 o'clock, with some really good guests. Unfortunately, Chappers can't make it tomorrow. He's got some family commitments, but I've got some really good guests on with me tomorrow. So please tune in, 8 o'clock as normal, for some waffle. And then next Wednesday, a week tomorrow, there's a big guest joining me, a big announcement coming. I'll tell you tomorrow if you watch the show. So stay tuned to get that information. But thank you ever so much again for everyone. Please give us a like before you depart YouTube. Please tell your friends about us as well to get our subscribers up, get the show content out there a bit more. And yeah, thank you ever so much for all of your help, support, and for watching. And for those that are listening to the podcast, thank you very much as well. So take care until tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Alex Song. Oh, through for Henry. What a moment! It just had to be Thierry Henry. The script was written. and he delivered his lines to perfection. What a finish that was